Hi, welcome back to class, and we're here for week 2. So as we move along, what you're going to do is you had to click on week 2 to get here. So we're at week 2, and as you look at the layout of the class, you can access most things right from here. So as you work your way down, I'll put the video right above the week 2 assignments, so the screencast will be up there. And this is the way I'll deliver most videos for the semester. Will be on screencasts. So I'll click through the assignments and then show you what we expect. This week we're going to look at culture, and this is actually a very large draw to sociology for a lot of people. You know, they're interested in investigating different cultures and maybe seeing what kind of similarities or differences we may have between cultures and examine those. So we're gonna look at that a little bit this week. So the first thing I want you to do is start responding to the sociological perspective threads, and there's 2 ways you can get back to those. So each week you're gonna basically bounce around from the prior week for your discussion. So you can go back to week 1 and go down to your discussion threads and click on here and start responding. Each week I do expect for each thread a total of 3 responses minimum for each thread. You also have the ability to go to the Discuss tab and pop on down and go to the discussion that we're thinking of. So this will be week 1, and the computer's going nice and slow today for me. You'll just respond to these 2 questions, and on this tab you can also see the questions for this week. So you have 2 ways to get to that. I used to put the link to the prior week on each week, but for some reason that would get confusing for people, and they would it didn't work out so well. So I found over the years this works better. Okay, so you start off by doing that, and every week these will piggyback. So what you end one week with your initial post, you'll carry on your discussion the next week. And that's part of what I do to make the class a social experience. It's very difficult in an online class to have a social community be developed, and I found this is the best way. I have a friend who teaches at Kent State, and he came up with this model, and it works pretty well. There's some confusion at the beginning of the semester where people will post responses a little bit early, but that's to be expected, and that's fine. So you're going to respond to each of the first 2 threads that you did on sociology, what it is, and how you would explain it to somebody. Then you're going to read chapter 2 of the text, and there's going to be a reading on doing field work with the Yamano, and this is about a South American Indian tribe in the Amazon rainforest. And so you're going to look at field work and how that's done, and there's some slides you can see, and there's a couple of short documentaries on this field work. And then from there you'll go on to a Dropbox assignment about that. This will be about half of your Dropbox grade for the week. Each week you have about 10 points generally in the Dropbox. Then we're going to look at the idea of cultural diffusion, and we're going to watch a video about a subculture, and this was looking at ska music, which is a music that you may or may not be familiar with, but it has an interesting way that it's grown in popularity and moved around. It's not super popular, but it's something quite a few people know about, and it's interesting to see the origins of this and how it grew through time. There's a Dropbox assignment on that that's going to look at cultural diffusion, and you're going to post 2 initial posts to a discussion board. Again, do not respond to these posts because you're responding to last week's post at this point, but you have to have your initial post down, and you won't be able to read anybody's posts until you do post them. And there's also a knowledge review quiz that you're going to do. Another thing you should have done from last week was all of your posting on the introduction board. I'll give you another week to make sure that you go back and you read everybody's initial post. To get full credit for this assignment, you do have to read everyone's initial post. So please do that and have at least 3 responses to that discussion board on the introduction. I want to make sure that you guys have something to bounce back to. If you get an interesting conversation on D2L, then you can know more about each other. Again, I want to develop a sense of community, and who knows, maybe some friendships will be made online in this class. I always like the idea of that, even in an online class, that people can develop some kind of friendship. So we're gonna I'll just work my way through here. This first one is a link to an excerpt on doing field work, and this is from a longer book, but it's an excerpt of the book, and it gives you some idea of what went on. Then there's some slides on the tribe that was visited by this gentleman, and you will be able to see some pictures. There's a couple of short videos I found that get a little more in depth. And then I want you to answer 2 questions. And you're going to just do short 1 to 2 paragraph answers. This should have said paragraph. I'll change that. But I want you to look at what cultural rules the Yanomamo follow that you do not follow as you live in your particular culture, and how have you been socialized into not following these rules. And so you're looking at how you may have developed differently in a different culture. And then you're going to look at what cultural values that you follow that they do not follow in their culture. Just name a couple. We don't have to get too in depth. I'm really just trying to open your eyes up to seeing people and trying to evaluate what they do. And remember, what people do that's different doesn't mean that it's worse or it's bad. So don't think we're trying to get in that direction. There's a lot of comparative studies between cultures, and if we can see our differences and similarities, there's a lot to grow from there. Then we're going to have there's a short reading on cultural diffusion. And again, this is the concept that when you have a culture or a subculture, that other people pick up on this. And so as you can tell by my last name, I'm an Italian American. And I was reading an autobiography when I was in college, 20 something years ago. And it was by Lee Iacocca, and he's another Italian American. And he was discussing the fact that people around him when he was in grade school thought eating pizza was strange. He tried to describe what pizza was to them, and he said, well, it's a tomato and cheese pie, and they thought he was crazy. And he wrote in the book that if he knew then what he knows now about pizza, he would have gotten rich on that area too. He happened to be the person who invented the Mustang and has done a lot of other things, but he points out in his book how funny it was that people didn't realize that pizza was a normal food, and then now, I think in Spearfish there's got to be at least 5 different places to get pizzas. And so you're going to look at how cultures diffuse themselves and how they grow. If you take a class in race and ethnic relations, I teach one of those in spring. We look at how cultures not only assimilate and pick up the main culture, but there's also a reverse assimilation where some of the ideas from that culture leach into the mainstream culture. So again, reverse assimilation would look at how Italian Americans introduced pizza to mainstream America, and now you can't go to a town without a pizza place. Maybe you can, but I haven't really seen too many of those. So then we're going to take the idea of cultural diffusion. We're going to watch a noisy video. This is about 30 minutes, and it's looking at this evolution of this music, and how it came to England and from England went around the world, and it's music that's still being performed and still evolving. So it's a living subculture and music style. So you're going to look at that, and you're just going to go ahead and give 4 examples of cultural diffusion from this video. You don't have to write much about that. I just want you to kind of give me some information. Then we're going to have a knowledge review quiz on Chapter 2 concepts. Again, make sure you read the chapter before and you take your time to do this. Don't rush into these quizzes. I always point out at the beginning of the semester that there's no reason that you shouldn't get a good grade in this class. If you do these quizzes, you do the Dropbox assignments, and you communicate in the discussions, you should do great. Most people have problems if they fail to do those. We have PowerPoints, which you can look at if you want to. There's no requirement of that. I just put it there because some students want to see a PowerPoint. I just have the author-generated PowerPoint, so nothing from me. It's all from the person who wrote the textbook. Then there's, of course, your links to know more. If you have any questions, make sure you email me on D2L. So I do like to get my emails here. And as you're reading, I want you to, I'm going to put up another video at the end of the week discussing the process of building our paper. We're going to do it in increments, so it's not going to be difficult. And you're going to use, I'll just tell you now how we're doing this. You're going to use the concepts of this class to write a sociological biography. So you're going to talk about, for instance, how your culture or your subcultures develop who you are as a person. So it'll be a personal paper, and it should be fun to write. I find it fun to use the information to know more about myself, and I think that this class is good to help you develop an idea of more of yourself. And on a side note, in looking at culture, my undergrad degree is in American Indian Studies. And as I got that degree, I was amazed on how much I learned about aspects of my personal culture. I'm not American Indian. I'm Italian, and I have some other things in me. But I've grew interest in investigating my own culture as a result of studying Lakota culture here. So I think the gift of appreciating and acknowledging other people's cultures is a wonderful gift to have, and it's great to be curious about people around you. And plus, people like usually talking about themselves and discussing things that make them unique or make them special. And our cultures, they do make us very special. So thank you so much, and if you have any questions, make sure you get back to me.